This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, Agun Erev Shabbos Rabbi Isai. It's your favorite time of the week. You've been waiting for this all week, for your Imponderables on Parshas Yisro. By the way, the manuscript for the upcoming Haggadah has been submitted. If anybody would like to be Mishtatef, I would really appreciate it. I want to share with you some questions. These are gewaldige questions, amazing questions. Number one, in Perek Yud-Ches, Pasuk Gimel, the Pasuk says, Vayikach Yisro es Tzipoira Eshes Moshe V'es Shnei Vaneha, and her two children. And then later, it says, Moshe Rabbeinu goes out to greet Yisro and his children. And then it says, Yisro says, I've brought to you your wife and her children. Why does there seem to be a custody battle regarding the children of Moshe? That Yisro refers to them as her children, and Moshe says, no, they're my children. I just found that very interesting, and I haven't seen anyone who discusses that. Why Yisro refers to them as Tzipporah's children, and when in the pasuk that describes Moshe going out to greet them, it says Moshe went out to greet his children. Next, Perek Yud Ches pasuk Zayin. It says Vayetze Moshe. Moshe went out to greet his father-in-law. So Rashi says a very big kavod Yisro was niskabed with at that time, because who would see Moshe Rabbeinu go out and not accompany him and not escort him? So here's what I was bothered by. Rashi will only comment if he has a question on the pasuk. Rashi doesn't just elaborate. Rashi is not here to tell us midrashim or stories. What was troubling Rashi? That Rashi had the need to comment. A great kavod was shown to Yisro at that moment. Good for him. But how is that relevant? Why is it important for Rashi to comment on that? Okay. Next, Yisro comes to Moshe. And Rashi says Yisro was not happy. He said, Loi toiv. Rashi says, what did Yisro see? He saw Moshe sitting like a king and everyone standing up. And he thought it was improper. He thought Moshe Rabbeinu was being mezalzel on the kavod of Klal Yisrael, that he was sitting and everyone else was standing. So I don't understand that. That's why Yisro came? That's not what he told his son-in-law. He told his son-in-law, Naval Tibo, you're going to wear out doing this all day. So how could Rashi say that Yisro's problem was he thought Moshe Rabbeinu was not showing proper respect to Klal Yisrael? But that's definitely not what Yisro told Moshe. Unless you see from here that if you have a problem with something somebody's doing, then and you could get them to change it without telling them why you have a problem with it, maybe that's the better way to go. So in fact, Yisro's problem was he thought Moshe Rabbeinu was mistreating the Jewish people, but maybe Yisro thought that would not be good that would not be respectful, it would not be good for family dynamics, or whatever his cheshbon was. So he told Moshe, Naval Tibol, you're going to wear out. In other words, if you need to change someone's behavior, and you could accomplish it by telling the person, this is not good for you, then maybe you don't need to tell them the real reason. You don't have to tell them the real reason. You could just tell them you're better off getting somebody to change, explaining it to them that it's not good for them. Okay. Next question. It says Moshe listened to Koyol Chaisenai, the voice of his father-in-law. So for many, many years, this goes back like 20 years, Rashi in Parshas Vayera says that God told Abraham, "Kol asher tamer lech lecha, kol asher tamer lecha Sarah shema b'koila." Listen in her koil. So Rashi says, listen to her ruach hakodesh. So why doesn't Rashi here say that Moshe listened to the ruach hakodesh of Yisro? In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think I've seen in Rishonim or in the Medrash that the Medrash does comment that Yisro, that we learned from here, that Yisro had Ruach HaKodesh. But Rashi doesn't say that over here. And that's very interesting. Now, maybe the reason Rashi doesn't say it is, how does Rashi know anything about Ruach HaKodesh by Sarah? So there are different ways of understanding what Rashi's source is. The Sifsei Chachamim says that it says, Kol asher toimar elecha Sarah. It could have said, Shema Eleha. Lekoila, Bikoila sounds like something else. So from there Rashi derives Ruach HaKodesh. Then there would be no derivation here that Yisro had Ruach HaKodesh. But according to the other Perush that the Sifsei Chachamim says, namely, what do you mean listen to her voice, her sound? Koil is like a noise. Listen to her noise, listen to her words. So then here also it would seem that we're asking, here also it would seem that it should say, listen, Rashi should comment that Yisro had Ruach HaKodesh. Next, Rashi says in the words, Atem re'isem asher osisi l'Mitzrayim. You saw everything I did to Egypt. So I would have interpreted the pasuk, you saw all the great wonders that I did to Egypt. Look at my power, look at my might. Of course you have to listen to me. But Rashi doesn't interpret it that way. Rashi interprets, the Egyptians, they had so many sins, and yet I never punished them until they met up with you and they sinned against you, and then I punished them. Why is Rashi emphasizing that? Maybe Hashem was just saying, look at my power, look at my might, look at my ability. Isn't that good enough reason why you should listen to me and accept the Torah? Because of what I did to Egypt in terms of power? Why is Rashi interpreting, look what I did to Egypt, I never punished them until they harmed you? It seems like Rashi is trying to explain how Hashem is trying to motivate the Jewish people to accept the Torah out of love. So it's not enough just to say, look at my mighty acts. But instead Hashem says, look how much I love you. The Mitzrayim got away with murder until it affected you, but as soon as they laid their fingers on you, then I didn't tolerate that. So in other words, Hashem was trying to motivate the Jewish people to accept the Torah out of Ahava. Okay, I have a few more bomb questions over here. Rashi says that the Psukim imply that God came to Har Sinai before the Jews got there. Rashi says this is not the normal thing for a Rebbe to do for a Talmud, that the Rebbe should come to the Shiur first and then the Talmidim come. No, that's not Derech Eretz. Normally, the Talmidim should come and the Rebbe comes when the Rebbe is ready. But God didn't do that. God didn't follow the regular protocol. God showed up first. The question is, but a few Rashis later he says that God came to the Jewish people like a chassan who goes out to a kala. Well, if that's the case, then that's the reason why God came first. Because he's trying to be like a chassan who first comes and comes to go out to the kala. Okay, here's another bomb question. On Perek Chav Pasuk Tesvav, V'chol ha'amrayim, all the people saw. Rashi says, from here we see, there were no blind Yidden. I don't understand. Rashi already said this in the beginning of the Parsha, in Perek Yotes Pasuk Yud Aleph, Le'enei kol ha'am. So we see there were no blind people. Why does Rashi need to derive this twice? So if you say, well, the first time God was saying, I will appear before the eyes of all the people, so the God was saying there won't be blind people, and then Rashi needs to comment that in fact when it happened there weren't. I mean, once God said that's going to happen, isn't that good enough? Not sure. Then here's another question. In Perek Yotes Pasuk Chaf, On Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai, Rashi says, Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai, God came on Har Sinai, and then Rashi says, but it says Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Shamayim. So Rashi says, nah, God brought down the heaven, and He spread it out over Har Sinai like a sheet. But I don't understand, the end of the Parsha, Rashi asks the same stira. It says Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai, and it says Min HaShamayim. Oh, we have a third says Rashi, two answers. One answer is, his voice came from Shamayim, and his great fire was Ba'aretz. Davar Acher, he brought down the heaven and he spread it out on the mountain. What do you mean Davar Acher? The second shot of Rashi at the end of the Parsha, Rashi already said definitively at the beginning of the Aseres HaDibros. So, these are a number of questions. Why does the Torah go back and forth about the ownership of the children of Moshe Rabbeinu? What is bothering Rashi that he had to say that Yisro was given a great kavod at that moment? Number 3, the reason that Yisro tells Moshe is not the reason that the Torah, that Rashi says he was troubled that Moshe wasn't giving the people honor. Why doesn't Rashi comment that Yisro had Ruach HaKodesh like he does about Sarah? Why does Rashi interpret Atem Re'isem Asher Asisi L'Mitzrayim differently than the Pashup Pshat that Rashi interprets it? You saw that I didn't harm the Mitzrim until they harmed you. Why does Rashi give first comment that Hashem acted differently than a Rebbe would to a Talmud, but then soon he says he did it because he was a Chassan? Why does Rashi 2 times derive that there were no blind people in by Kabbalas HaTorah? And why at first does Rashi give only one reason to reconcile whether the Torah came from heaven or earth, and in the end he gives 2 possible answers? Okay, so those are the questions on this week's Parsha, and now we're going to go to Tefillah.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.